Okay, so going green, right. Everyone's talking about it. It's trendy.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Right.
But it's also creating some opportunities, I think, for companies to maybe take some shortcuts
Absolutely.
when it comes to actually being sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about today, greenwashing.
Mm.
Basically, misleading claims about your environmental practices just to try to appeal to those eco-conscious consumers.
Right. It's all about perception versus reality when
Exactly.
it comes to these companies and their sustainability initiatives.
And today, we're going deep into the dark side of greenwashing.
Ooh.
The consequences,
Yeah.
the fines that companies face when they get caught.
That's right.
And we've got some shocking cases for you today. Some big names.
Oh, yeah.
Some really jaw-dropping sums of money.
Millions and billions of dollars.
And you might be surprised to hear that it's not just small companies getting caught.
Right.
We're talking about big, well-known corporations.
Huge global companies.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't expect to be
Oh, sure.
engaging in this kind of behavior.
So,
It's really interesting because these fines are not just like a cost of doing business anymore.
right.
They represent like a shift, I think,
Yeah,
in how seriously greenwashing is being taken these days
for sure.
by regulators and consumers who are wising up
Yeah.
to these
Oh,
tactics.
absolutely.
And the consequences are becoming very real.
So let's jump right in. Let's start with the top 3 fines. The heavy hitters.
Yeah.
The ones that really shook things up. First up,
Uh-huh.
Volkswagen.
Yeah,
Remember Dieselgate?
of course. Back in 2015,
Yeah.
the EPA caught them red-handed, basically using software to cheat emissions tests.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a minor discrepancy. Like,
Right.
their diesel cars
Right.
were emitting up to 40 times the legal limit
Oh, wow.
for nitrogen oxide.
Yeah, which is a major air pollutant.
Exactly. So this isn't just about misleading consumers.
Right.
This is about public health.
The environment.
The environment, yeah.
Impacts.
Huge impact. And their CEO
Uh-huh.
even admitted to dishonesty,
Wow.
which I think speaks volumes
Oh, totally.
about the severity of this
Yeah,
of the situation.
definitely.
And the fallout was massive. Hundreds of thousands of cars recalled globally, fines, lawsuits.
Reputational damage.
Huge blow to their reputation.
Absolutely.
I mean, it really throws a wrench into the idea
Right.
that companies can just sweep environmental issues under the rug.
Yeah, they tried to, and it
Right.
backfired spectacularly.
Totally.
And this scandal also really highlighted the vulnerability
Yeah.
of regulatory testing systems and the need for stricter oversight
Uh-huh.
of corporate environmental claims.
Yeah.
And the financial hit was staggering.
I mean, it was over 30 billion euros,
Oh,
which is nearly 35 billion US dollars
goodness.
in fines,
Yeah.
legal fees,
Settlements.
everything. It makes you wonder, was the short-term profit worth the long-term damage?
No kidding.
This wasn't just a financial hit. Volkswagen's brand, built on reliability and engineering, severely tarnished.
Yeah.
It shows how greenwashing can backfire spectacularly.
Anytime.
But the auto industry is not alone in this, Toyota.
Mm.
A company often associated with fuel efficiency
Mm-hmm.
also found itself in hot water.
Interesting.
This time, it wasn't about manipulating emissions.
Oh, yeah.
It was a blatant lack of transparency.
Uh-huh. What's interesting about Toyota's case is that it exposed this pattern
Okay.
of delayed reporting on emissions-related issues.
Okay.
They failed to report defects
Yeah.
and were really slow to inform the EPA
Mm-hmm.
about progress on recalls. And we're not talking about a slight delay.
Okay.
Some of these reports were filed 8 years late.
8 years.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how much greenwashing is going undetected.
Oh, absolutely. And it raises all these questions about corporate responsibility.
Yeah.
Was this a deliberate attempt to avoid scrutiny? Maintain a positive public image, even at the expense of environmental responsibility?
It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
And this violation of the U.S. Clean Air Act
That's right.
resulted in a $180 million fine.
Wow.
That's huge. This case really
Yeah.
throws a wrench into the idea that companies can just sweep these environmental issues under the rug.
Right.
Regulators are taking notice, and the penalties are getting serious.
Absolutely. The cost of greenwashing is going up.
It is. And get this, Toyota's greenwashing troubles didn't end there.
Oh.
They're potentially facing another fine
Okay.
in Australia for overstating emissions.
It seems like a pattern of behavior.
Yeah, it does seem like a pattern of behavior, not just an isolated incident.
Right, right. It speaks to a potential disconnect between a company's public image and its actual practices.
Okay. Let's shift gears to a different industry,
Okay.
finance.
All right.
DWS,
Yeah.
backed by Deutsche Bank,
Yeah.
got caught in the murky world of ESG investing. This is where investors try to align their portfolios with their values,
Right.
environmental, social,
Right.
governance factors.
Right. Yep.
DWS was marketing itself as a leader
Oh.
in ESG investing,
Hmm.
touting their DWS ESG engine.
What's important to understand about ESG investing is that it's become so popular. And some companies may be tempted to capitalize on the trend without genuinely integrating ESG principles into their practices.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
And that's what the SEC found with DWS.
They weren't actually implementing the ESG policies they were promising to investors. They were making misleading claims and potentially exaggerating the size of their ESG assets.
Right.
Essentially, they were profiting off the ESG trend without actually walking the walk.
Exactly. Just trying to, ride that wave of popularity without the substance behind it.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, a former employee blew the whistle,
Oh, wow.
alleging that they misrepresented the size of their ESG assets.
So it's not just regulators cracking down.
Yeah.
It's also employees who are seeing these inconsistencies and speaking out.
That's right. This case really shows how multiple layers of accountability are coming into play. And it cost DWS $25 million in a settlement with the SEC.
Yeah. Another hefty price to pay.
Those were our top three.
Wow.
I don't know about you, but I'm already feeling a little disillusioned.
It's understandable to feel that way, but it's important to remember that these cases coming to light is actually a sign of progress.
Okay.
It means that scrutiny is increasing
Okay.
and that greenwashing is becoming harder to get away with.
That's a good point. Now let's look at some other notable cases,
Right.
focusing on specific details that really capture the essence of greenwashing and its consequences.
Okay.
Eni, an Italian oil company, got into trouble for their so-called green diesel, Eni Diesel Plus.
Okay.
They claimed it was an environmentally friendly alternative to regular diesel made with palm oil.
So palm oil is often touted as this sustainable biofuel. But the problem is that the way it's often produced, clearing land for plantations, leads to deforestation, habitat destruction, biodiversity loss. So while it might seem like a good alternative on the surface, the overall impact can be quite negative.
Right, and it gets worse. The palm oil they were using was actually worse
What?
for the environment than regular diesel.
Seriously?
Yeah, biodiesel made from palm oil can release 3 times as many emissions as fossil fuel diesel. Talk about a greenwashing fail.
It really is. It's a classic example of greenwashing by association, where a company uses imagery or language that evokes nature while ignoring the broader environmental impact of their products.
For sure. And to make matters worse, Eni knew about these environmental risks, even back in the 1970s. They were aware of the link between their activities and climate change, yet continued to promote their products as eco-friendly.
Wow.
Greenpeace, Italy, and other NGOs filed a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And Eni, in a rather defiant move,
Okay.
plans to countersuit. Yeah. This really highlights the tension between profit-driven industries and those advocating for environmental protection.
Right.
And it raises questions about corporate accountability and the role of legal action in holding companies responsible for their environmental impact.
Absolutely. It's like a complex battle for sure.
Yeah, it is. Okay, now let's bring it back to something a little more relatable.
Okay.
Bamboo sheets and bath rugs.
Oh, I love bamboo sheets.
Kohl's and Walmart got into trouble for selling products they claimed were made from bamboo.
So bamboo is a fast-growing, renewable resource.
It is.
Making it a popular choice for sustainable products. But in this case, the products were actually made from rayon.
Rayon is a semi-synthetic material derived from cellulose, often from wood pulp. While it can be sourced sustainably, the process is often less eco-friendly than bamboo production.
Gotcha.
And the issue here was that Kohl's and Walmart used terms like sustainable and highly renewable in their marketing, misleading consumers into thinking that they were buying something more environmentally friendly than they actually were.
They were playing right into consumers' desire for eco-conscious products.
Yes.
But failing to deliver on those promises.
And it cost them. The FTC hit them with a combined $5.5 million settlement.
Wow.
It's a reminder that even seemingly small things, like the materials used in everyday products, can become a greenwashing issue.
It really can.
It shows that regulators are paying attention to details and that Companies need to be careful about the claims they make.
Absolutely.
Even for seemingly innocuous products.
It's about the integrity of the entire supply chain.
Exactly. Okay, we've got a few more cases to touch on, so let's make it snappy.
All right.
Goldman Sachs was fined $4 million for failing to follow their own ESG investment policies and misleading customers. They weren't as green as they were making themselves out to be.
Right.
And Keurig, the coffee pod company, got hit with a $2.2 million fine in Canada for claiming that their single-use pods were recyclable, when in reality they weren't widely accepted by recycling programs.
It highlights the importance of considering the entire life cycle of a product.
Yeah.
Not just its initial composition.
That's a good point.
Right.
Just because something is made from recyclable materials doesn't mean it will actually be recycled.
Exactly.
And then there's BNY Mellon, another financial institution,
Right.
fined $1.5 million for overstating the ESG value of their investments.
It seems like greenwashing is rampant in the financial world.
It does.
Which is kind of ironic, given their focus on long-term value.
It is a bit ironic, isn't it?
It is. It speaks to the power of ESG investing and the temptation for companies to capitalize on that trend, even if they're not fully committed to it.
Okay, let's wrap up this section with two cases from the fashion industry.
Right.
H&M and Decathlon.
These cases highlight how even vague terms like conscious choice or eco-design can be misleading if they're not backed up by concrete evidence.
Yeah.
Right? They create this impression of sustainability without providing specific details about what makes those products environmentally friendly.
Right, and they show how greenwashing isn't just about outright lies. It can also be about using language that creates this false impression of sustainability.
Right.
It's about understanding the nuances of marketing and recognizing that companies may use language to appeal to consumer desires without necessarily aligning with those values in practice.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean? Well, for one thing, it's clear that greenwashing is a serious issue with far-reaching consequences. Companies are facing significant financial penalties.
Right.
And perhaps more importantly, their reputations are taking a hit as consumers become more aware and less tolerant of these practices.
Right.
And it also shows that regulators are stepping up their efforts to combat greenwashing.
Yeah.
And consumers are demanding greater transparency from the companies they support.
Absolutely. This is a positive trend, as it creates pressure for companies to genuinely integrate sustainability into their operations rather than just using it as a marketing ploy.
Absolutely. But before we get into the bigger picture and what all of this means for the future of sustainability, let's dig into how you, the listener, can spot and avoid greenwashing in your own life.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's empower the listeners to become greenwashing detectives.
Exactly.
In their own right. I love it.
All right, let's do it.
You know, as we've been talking about these cases, it's become clear that greenwashing isn't just a series of isolated incidents.
Right.
It's a symptom of a larger disconnect, I think, between what consumers want and what some companies are willing to deliver.
That's a great point. And it seems like that disconnect is starting to close.
Yeah.
Consumers are becoming more aware of greenwashing tactics, and they're demanding greater transparency from the brands they support.
We're seeing this global shift in consumer behavior. People are tired of empty promises.
Yeah.
Misleading marketing.
For sure.
They want to support companies that are genuinely committed to sustainability, not just paying lip service to it.
Right. And this shift in consumer demand is driving this wave of anti-greenwashing legislation around the world. It's not just about individual companies facing fines anymore. It's about systemic change.
Exactly. So, for example, the EU is introducing this new law in 2026 that will ban misleading environmental claims. And hold companies accountable for their labeling.
Wow.
So no more vague terms like eco-friendly or sustainable without clear evidence to back them up.
I love that. It's like they're creating a level playing field where companies can't just throw around these buzzwords.
Substance.
Yeah, no more greenwashing smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Right? It's about putting the evidence front and center.
And the U.S. isn't far behind.
Yeah.
The FTC has its green guides, which provides these guidelines for companies making environmental claims.
Right. And the UK has new rules to prevent financial firms from making misleading claims about their ESG practices.
It feels like the tide is turning.
It does.
And companies are finally being held accountable for their environmental impact.
Yeah. But what does this mean for businesses that are genuinely trying to do the right thing?
Well, it means that transparency is more important than ever.
Okay.
Companies need to be clear and specific about their sustainability efforts, providing data and evidence to support their claims. It's about moving beyond marketing.
Yeah.
And showing consumers how their actions are aligned with their words.
And it's not just about avoiding fines.
No.
It's about building trust with consumers.
Right.
Greenwashing erodes trust, and once that trust is gone, it's very difficult to regain.
It really is. Consumers are savvy, and they have access to more information than ever before.
Yeah.
They can quickly see through those empty claims, and they're going to reward companies that are authentic and transparent.
So let's shift gears for a moment and talk about what all of this means for us, the consumers.
Yeah.
We've seen how companies can be deceptive, but how can we as individuals spot greenwashing and make informed choices?
Right.
I mean, it can feel overwhelming, right?
It can.
There's so much information out there.
It can be, but that's why it's so important to develop that critical eye.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So first and foremost, be wary of vague or generic claims.
Okay.
Don't be swayed by buzzwords like natural or eco-friendly or green.
Right.
Right. Look for specific details about a company's sustainability practices, such as the materials they use, their manufacturing processes, or their carbon footprint. Ask yourself, what are they actually doing to minimize their environmental impact?
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
If a company's being evasive or can't provide concrete evidence to support their claims,
Right.
that's a red flag.
Big red flag.
Yeah.
It's also important to do your own research.
Okay.
Don't just rely on a company's marketing materials.
Right.
Look for third-party certifications or labels that verify a company's sustainability claims. There are organizations like the Forest Stewardship Council or the FSC for sustainable forestry, or B Corp for social and environmental performance.
Those are great resources.
Yeah, they really are.
And I think it's important to remember that sustainability is a journey, not a destination.
That's such a good point.
No company is perfect.
Right.
And there's always room for improvement.
That's a really important point. We need to move away from this idea of perfection and recognize that progress is what matters.
Yeah.
It's about finding those companies that are making genuine efforts and are transparent about their progress, even if they haven't reached some ideal state of sustainability.
And it's about holding companies accountable when they fall short.
Right.
We, as consumers, have the power to influence change through our purchasing decisions. And by advocating for greater transparency and accountability, we can choose to support companies that are aligned with our values and use our voices to challenge those that aren't.
That's the power of the consumer.
It is.
Right. We can drive change through our choices.
Yeah.
And our voices.
Absolutely. And by staying informed and engaged, we can contribute to a more sustainable future.
I love that.
It's not just about individual choices. It's about creating this collective demand for change.
We're all in this together.
We are.
We need to support policies and regulations that promote transparency, hold companies accountable, and encourage a shift toward a more circular economy.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've explored the dark side of greenwashing, the hefty fines companies face when they're caught, and the broader implications for businesses and consumers alike.
For sure.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a few final thoughts.
All right, let's do it.
So we've been talking about how consumers are becoming more aware of greenwashing, but how can we actually avoid it? It feels like every company wants to be seen as eco-friendly.
It's true. That's why it's so important to be an informed consumer.
Yeah.
One of the most common tactics is vague language.
Okay.
Like natural, eco-friendly, or green sound appealing.
Right.
But they don't tell you anything concrete.
So what should we look for instead of those buzzwords?
Look for specifics. What materials are they using? Where are their products made? What are their manufacturing processes like? Do they have a credible plan to reduce their carbon footprint?
Yeah.
Don't be swayed by slogans.
It's like you have to be like an eco-detective.
Exactly.
You have to look for the evidence.
You got to look for the receipts.
Yeah.
And don't just take the company's word for it.
Right.
Look for third-party certifications or labels that verify their claims, like the Forest Stewardship Council, the FSC, or B Corp. Those are great resources.
Those are good ones. And I think it's important to remember that we have a lot of power as consumers.
Yeah.
We can vote with our wallets and choose to support the companies that are aligned with our values.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of your voice. If you see a company making misleading claims, call them out. Social media can be a really powerful tool for holding companies accountable.
Yeah, for sure. The more we talk about greenwashing, the harder it'll be for companies to get away with it.
Exactly.
And you know what? We can also support organizations that are fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
That are working to promote transparency and advocate for stronger environmental regulations.
Absolutely. And remember, sustainability isn't just about what we buy. It's also about how we use and dispose of products. Reducing consumption, reusing items whenever possible, and recycling properly are all essential parts of being a responsible consumer.
You're totally right. Sustainability is a holistic approach.
It is.
And it starts with being mindful of our own impact.
Right.
It's about making conscious choices in all areas of our lives.
Well said.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing that we're all in this together. We need to work collectively to create a more sustainable future for everyone. It's not just about individual actions. It's about systemic change. We need to support policies and regulations that promote transparency, hold companies accountable, and encourage a shift towards a more circular economy.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive into the world of greenwashing.
It has.
We've seen how companies are using these misleading tactics to appear more sustainable than they are. And hopefully we've given you some tools to spot those tactics and become more conscious consumers.
I think the key takeaway here is that we have the power to make a difference. By staying informed, asking those critical questions, and supporting the companies that are genuinely committed to sustainability, we can drive that positive change. And create a more sustainable future for all.
Absolutely. So let's all commit to being more informed, more discerning consumers. Let's demand transparency. Hold companies accountable, and work together to create a world where sustainability is the norm, not a marketing tactic.
Love it.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive.
Great episode.
Until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.